What a beautiful Friday in September 12th, 2025. We are one day away from another fantastic college football Saturday in the state of Alabama, around the SEC, across the country. And if we ever needed community in the United States of America, we need it right now. And there are a few better places to find community than at a football game, at a high school football game. If you get a chance, get out to a high school game tonight. I was privileged to see one last night as part of my work with Alabama Public Television. Made a nice trip to Huntsville to watch North Jackson take care of St. John Paul II. But just the atmosphere around a high school football game is special. And if you live in the South in particular, you know what that's like. So get out there tonight. If you're watching this before Friday evening, go watch your local high school play. Cheer on those guys. All right, we're going to talk scheduling here on ScarboKnows. I am Scarbo, Kevin Skarbinski. Good to see you. Thanks for checking in today on this beautiful Friday. We're going to talk scheduling. We're going to talk scheduling philosophies. We're going to talk the yin and the yang of Auburn and Alabama's scheduling philosophy because of whom Auburn is playing tomorrow. And like a good neighbor, Auburn is there, mostly for its in-state non-conference rivals. In a distinct difference, the University of Alabama is not. So let's get into it. And there you see the names of all of the FBS programs in the state of Alabama. We've got Alabama, we've got Auburn, we've got North Alabama, which is an FCS pro. I shouldn't say FBS. I should say FCS and FBS programs. We've got North Alabama, Alabama A&M, UAB, Samford, South Alabama, Jack State, Alabama State, and Troy. And this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. And people have accused me over the years of beating a dead horse. They ask me, why do you continue to talk about the fact that Alabama absolutely refuses to play an in-state non-conference opponent and has held this attitude since World War II? Because the last time Alabama played such a game was 1944 against Howard College, which would become the alma mater of Bobby Bowden and which would later become Samford University. 1944, the last time Alabama played an in-state non-conference opponent. So let's look at this difference given tomorrow. And we're not going to completely shred Alabama, though, about its scheduling philosophy. We're going to give them kudos on one very important point, while we give Auburn kudos on a very different point. So let's look at this one Saturday, two philosophies approach. Tomorrow morning, actually, not afternoon. You don't have to wait very long. We have early kickoffs before noon. Both of the SEC programs in this state. Wisconsin will visit Alabama, returning the game when Alabama kicked Bucky Badger to the curb last year in Madison. So they will be in Bryant-Denny Stadium tomorrow morning. And South Alabama, for the first time, will play in Jordan-Hare Stadium against Auburn. Also a brunch kickoff, if you will. The Jaguars excited about this opportunity. And this is important because Auburn is playing, let me get my number right. It's 69th game of all time against an in-state non-conference opponent. Its record in those games is 63-4-1. And the 4 losses and the 1 tie, let's see. I had to write this down. My memory's not that good. The losses to in-state non-conference opponents came in 1928, 1930, and 1934 against Birmingham Southern, an institution of higher learning which no longer exists, sadly. Whole another story. And then in 1945, Auburn lost to Maxwell Field. That's not an individual. That's an Air Force. It is now Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. And during World War II, they did play some football, and Maxwell Field beat Auburn 7-0. And the one tie on Auburn's record against in-state non-conference opponents came in 1927. 2 years before the stock market crash of 29 precipitated the Great Depression. Auburn tied Samford 9-9 that year. So since 1945, every time Auburn has played an in-state non-conference opponent, it has won the game. So Auburn, and this, by the way, Auburn has played 14 of these games in the last. Has played 10 of these games in the last 14 years. I got a little numerical dyslexia there. 10 of these games in the last 14 years. They have played Samford 4 times. They've played Alabama A&M 3 times. They've played Alabama State a couple of times. And they have played Jacksonville State. And we're going to talk about that game, that memorable Jacksonville State game, a little bit later here in the show. But here's where I want to give Alabama credit. Let's look at future schedules, because this is always a fascinating subject, and it's changing, obviously, with the SEC moving to a 9-game conference schedule starting next year. But let's look at the known future non-conference opponents for Alabama and Auburn starting next year. And kudos to our friends at fbsschedules.com for the information. They do a great job keeping up with this stuff. So next year, and this is where Alabama gets full credit, and kudos to Greg Byrne and company. They are already ahead of the curve in terms of scheduling Power 4 non-conference opponents. They already played Florida State this year. They're playing Wisconsin tomorrow. That's 2. Next year, they've got the return game. Florida State will come to Tuscaloosa. 2027, how about Alabama in the Horseshoe at Ohio State? And then the next year, Ohio State in Bryant-Denny Stadium. If you care about college football, if college football gets your juices flowing, you got to get excited about that home-and-home series. And then there's a home-and-home series with Oklahoma State, which, sorry, Mike Gundy, you may be a man, but you ain't what you used to be, and neither is your football program. But there will be a home-and-home with the Cowboys. And then how about Notre Dame? How about Alabama at Notre Dame in 2029 and Notre Dame at Alabama the next year? And let's throw in Georgia Tech as well for the vintage Alabama fans who remember that heated rivalry going back to Bear Bryant and Bobby Dodd. While Alabama's playing some of the biggest name programs in the country in this stretch, let's look at Auburn in that time. You don't see the same number of big names. You see a home-and-home with Miami in 29 and 30. That's fantastic. Love to see it. But what you see on Auburn's side of the ledger that you don't see on Alabama's side, Jack State next year, and North Alabama, which only recently moved up from Division II to the football championship subdivision in 2028. The Lions will be in Bryant-Denny Stadium. So we have got to give Auburn full credit for the scheduling approach. And you might say, why does this matter? Why does this matter? What difference does it make if Alabama plays Louisiana Monroe and Eastern Illinois, as they're going to do this year, and Auburn plays South Alabama among its bye games, its guarantee games? And by the way, Auburn is paying South Alabama $1.3 million to come to the Plains, while Alabama paid Louisiana Monroe $1.9 million to go to the Capstone last weekend and get beat 73-0. Well, if you've been following the coverage of my friend and colleague Craig Stevenson, does fantastic work for AL.com. He covers South Alabama, lives in the Mobile area. He covers South Alabama. He's been there since that program started in 2009, relatively young program. And what this means to Major Applewhite, for example, the head coach at South Alabama, former offensive coordinator, Nick Saban's first offensive coordinator at Alabama. Didn't go so well in 2007. He didn't last very long. And, of course, Major is a major figure in the history of Texas football as a former quarterback there. Major is now the head coach at South Alabama. But South Alabama has actually won these type of games before. Before Major, they beat Oklahoma State once, beat them pretty badly. And they have an SEC scalp on their wall. They beat Mississippi State back in 2016. So it's one of those games that if it's early and there's no buzz in the stadium and the laser light show and the new sound system that they put in Jordan-Hare Stadium that they debuted against Ball State last week, it doesn't quite have the same effect at 11:45 in the morning as it does at 6:45 in the evening or 8:45 in the evening. Whenever they got to the fourth quarter last week, people who were there were wowed. I have a very good friend who was there with his family, and he told me that as electric as Jordan-Hare After Dark can be, it went to a whole nother level with this new sound and lighting system that they put in. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like for Georgia in a few weeks when the Bulldogs roll in there, and it will be a night game, night kickoff. So it will be, I think it will be dark from kickoff. I'm not sure. It might be close, but it might be dusk. But they're going to get the full effect of the lights and the sound and the atmosphere and the energy and the intensity that Auburn usually brings to the Georgia game. Doesn't usually translate into a victory. It hasn't for too many years from Auburn's perspective, but they will come ready to play. It's not quite the same at 11:45 in the morning. And I have a theory, and I wonder if you would share this or if you think I'm nuts, but with all of this new technology that college football programs are putting into their stadiums, Jack State, I was talking last night at the high school game that I was covering with Alan Metters. He's the vice president of philanthropy at Jacksonville State. He was showing me video. They have installed a new lighting and sound system at their home football stadium. So this is happening all over. And I wonder if it's going to make home field advantage all the more intimidating. If it's going to skew home records even more so and make it tougher for visiting teams to go into a place like Jordan-Hare Stadium or Bryant-Denny Stadium, especially after dark, when you get the full effect of the laser light show. When Auburn plays on the video board and flashes with lasers on the field the word haunted, and they show the clip of Nick Saban last year on College Game Day on the day that Texas A&M was playing at Auburn. Auburn was going nowhere. Auburn was having a very mediocre season, to be polite, in its second year under Hugh Freeze. And late in the year, Texas A&M was in contention to play in the SEC championship game, and they were going to Auburn. And on College Game Day, one of the most prescient things that Nick Saban has ever said, he said, I'm telling you, man, after 17 years of going to Auburn, that place is haunted. And what happened that night? In overtime, Auburn beat Texas A&M. I don't know how much haunting was going on, but there is something different about most places after dark. And Jordan-Hare might be Exhibit A. So that's why this game tomorrow is not quite, they won't quite have the same atmosphere. I know Auburn fans are more excited than they've been in years. They've been very loyal. And now they see a light at the end of the tunnel of these 4 straight losing seasons. And they should be excited. There is hope in a way that there hasn't been hope at Auburn in years. But South Alabama might have something to say about that. South Alabama has an assistant coach named Trey Williams, who played linebacker at Auburn. Played linebacker at Auburn when Jacksonville State rolled in there in 2015. We're going to talk about that again in a few minutes. So let's look at the number of non-conference opponents in state that have played at Alabama and at Auburn over different periods of time. And you just have to laugh. Since 1945, Alabama has not played a single in-state non-conference opponent. Since 2011, Auburn has played 10. As we said, the last 14 years, Auburn's done this 10 times. And you have to give them credit. Again, 4 times they played Samford, Alabama A&M 3 times, Alabama State twice, and Jacksonville State once. And lest you think that this is just Auburn showing an extraordinary degree of neighborliness. They do call it the loveliest village on the plains. It is a great place to visit. Go to Toomer's Corner, drink some lemonade. It just has that it's a much bigger college than it's ever been, but it has that small town feel to it. But unless you think this is just Auburn, it's not just Auburn. Unless you think that Auburn is the outlier, no. Alabama is the outlier here. Let's look at SEC hospitality in general, because this is a trend and you love to see it. This is this season alone. 11 different SEC programs are playing 18 games, 18 non-conference games against in-state opponents. South Carolina's got 3 of them in South Carolina State, Coastal Carolina, and their annual opponent Clemson, their annual rival. And Florida might wish it didn't, but it is also playing 3 non-conference in-state teams in USF, Miami, and Florida State. And, of course, they've already dropped the game to USF. And that raises the whole question, and it reinforces the belief of some coaches that you don't want to play these games because it's a no-win situation in their minds. If you win the game, you're supposed to win the game. You're the bigger school. You have more money. You have a larger NIL budget. You have more money in revenue sharing to distribute to your athletes. You have a bigger stadium. You have more history and tradition. You have everything on your side. You are not supposed to lose to little brother. And if you do, ask Billy Napier what their reaction is going to be. Bad enough that they lost a non-conference game before embarking on the toughest SEC schedule maybe ever. Maybe the toughest overall schedule ever. Because Florida's going to LSU this weekend, to Miami next weekend. Then they get a week off. Then Texas goes to the Swamp. And then they got to turn around and go to Kyle Field and play Texas A&M. Maybe the toughest 4-game stretch any SEC team has ever played. And it would be hard enough had they beaten South Florida 30-0, which, of course, they did not. They got beat, and they looked bad and sloppy and poorly coached and poorly organized while doing it. So is that the game that's going to be the tipping point for Billy Napier? Probably not. But it just means something. It does mean more if you can keep that money in the state. That's what Hugh Freeze said this week. He was talking about playing South Alabama. He's played one of these in-state non-conference teams every year since he's been at Auburn. He knows what it means, and he values that. He also knows what it means from the other side because he's been at Arkansas State. He's been at Liberty. He's been the little brother. So having been there, he appreciates what it means for little brother to play big brother. Shows you that most of the time, was the stat, 63 times out of 68 previous meetings, big brother won. And little brother hasn't won since 1945 against Auburn. However, sometimes the moon is in the 7th house, and Jupiter aligns with Mars, and conditions come together, and you find yourself in real jeopardy. And that happened to Auburn 10 years ago this very day, September 12th, 2015. And if you're interested in a really informative, entertaining deep dive on what happened 10 years ago today, I highly encourage you to go to al.com/sports and read the takeout by my friend Craig Stevenson, posted today, in which he talks to John Gross, who was the Jacksonville State coach at the time. He talks to Trey Williams, now a South Alabama assistant, who played for Auburn that day. He talks to Eli Jenkins, the outstanding Jacksonville State quarterback on that team. that had Auburn in its sights, had the game won, should have won the game. But they weren't able to close it out. They shanked a punt late. Auburn drove a short field to tie the game with 39 seconds left and then won in overtime, 27-20. And Auburn was the number 6 team in the country in the AP poll going into that game. Now, Jacksonville State, like all of these programs in this state, and this state is unusual in that there is great football history and tradition at Troy, at UAB, short as their football lifespan has been, at North Alabama, which won 3 straight Division II national championships under Bobby Wallace, at Jack State, which has won a D2 national championship, at Troy, my alma mater. And you want to know why this matters to me? Because I was an undergraduate student at Troy University. So far back, it wasn't called Troy University. It was called Troy State. And the distance that Troy, for example, and this is true of Jack State and all these other programs, the distance that Troy has traveled from my undergraduate days to today, when I was a senior there, I went to a game on a Saturday afternoon. I'm sitting in the stands. Now, it was like a high school stadium at the time. It's been enlarged and improved so much since then. But I'm sitting there minding my own business. It's a Saturday afternoon. We weren't having a very good season. And all of a sudden, an official walks up into the bleachers and comes over to me and says, "Hey, we're a little short on the chain gang. You want to help us out?" Me? Of course. Who wouldn't say yes to that? I've never done anything like that. I thought, what an opportunity, right? And the one memory I have of that afternoon when I worked the chain gang for the Troy State, I think it was Mississippi College game, they gave us a little tutorial beforehand, and the most important lesson they gave us, the only thing I remember was, don't be a hero. If the ball and the play starts coming in your direction, drop the chain, get out of the way. Don't try to absorb contact. Don't try to stay in there till the last second. And I'll never forget the first time somebody ran a sweep in my direction. I think it might have been when they pitched the ball. I started backing up and backpedaling furiously. But that's how small Troy was, and that's how much Troy has grown as a D2 program, a Division I AA program, as they called it at the time, and now as an FBS program that came so close to beating Clemson last week. They had Clemson almost on the ropes at the end of up 16-0 late in the second quarter in Death Valley. Clemson was able to come back. But you think about what was happening. At one time last Saturday afternoon, Jack State had beaten Liberty, which has been a lower-level power for some time. And then Troy was beating Clemson, a 2-time national champion in the last decade. They were winning 16-0. And even UAB, which has struggled terribly under Trent Dilfer, was tied with Navy at halftime. And they had multiple weather delays, and the Blazers weren't able to sustain it in the second half. But football matters in Alabama. I don't have to tell you that. If you've even heard about the state, let alone been here, if you've never been to a game at North Alabama or Jacksonville or Troy or Protective Stadium to watch UAB, let alone Jordan-Hare Stadium and Bryant-Denny Stadium, and Alabama State and Alabama A&M and Samford, Bobby Bowden Field, the history and tradition here is, well, it's not as deep in terms of volume because of the number of schools as maybe some other states. But this state will not take a backseat to anyone in terms of football accomplishment at every level of the game. So that's why it matters to me that South Alabama is going to play Auburn, and Auburn is giving South Alabama that opportunity. And that's why it bothers me that Alabama, call it historical arrogance, call it whatever you like, but Alabama refuses to play these type of games. There is no reason for it. There's no logical rational reason for the University of Alabama. You call yourself the University of Alabama, but you won't play anyone else in the state of Alabama except the team in the state you have to play because they're in the same league in Auburn. You cannot justify it. You can't. And it is great that you play Florida State home and home, and you play Wisconsin home and home, and you're going to play Ohio State home and home, and you're going to play Notre Dame here and there. All hail to Greg Byrne and Alabama football for doing that. That's what you should be doing with your history and tradition as one of the marquee programs in the sport. But what you also could be doing and should be doing and still refuse to do is lift up the game in this state. You might think you're doing that by competing for championships and winning championships and playing marquee games and doing all the great things that you do for college football. But you won't do the simplest thing possible. One of the cool things I've gotten to do over the last several years, and I'm very grateful to Alabama Public Television, WOTM, for giving me the opportunity to be the host of the Super 7. Those are the high school state football championships in the state of Alabama. And 3 years ago, Alabama Public Television decided if you want to tell the story of Alabama, you can't tell the story of this state without including athletics. And if you really want to drill down, that involves high school football. And so they started televising live all of the Class 1A through 7A state championship games. Flag football came online, and so they also cover the flag football state championships. And I've got the best job in the world. I get to be the host. I get to be there for the pregame shows, the halftime shows, the postgame shows for 3 straight days. And for years, those championships were played in Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa and in Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn. They alternated. And what it meant to those young men and women in the flag football categories to be able to walk onto those fields and play a game to win a state championship is hard to put into words how special it was, because they also got to do what Alabama and Auburn do on Saturdays. They got to have a walk of champions before the game in Tuscaloosa. They got to have a Tiger Walk as they entered Jordan-Hare Stadium. They got to feel and experience, if only for a day, if only for a few hours, what it means to be an Alabama or Auburn football player. They got to dress in the same locker rooms. How special is that? Now, that doesn't still occur because scheduling issues have taken Alabama and Auburn out of the mix for the state high school football championships. Now they're played at Protective Stadium in Birmingham, and then I think it's next year they're going to alternate over the next 4 years with South Alabama's home stadium on campus. Looking forward to that. Haven't been there yet. Haven't seen a game there. So you'll still get that college experience that UAB feels on a Saturday, that South Alabama feels on a Saturday for a home game. So you're the University of Alabama. You can give South Alabama and Troy or Jack State or Alabama A&M or Samford or Alabama State, any of these programs, you could give them that same opportunity to feel a little bit more special about that game that day. And if you're worried about losing to any of these teams, guess what? It's most likely not going to happen. And if it does, they're not going to take away any of your national championship coaching statues outside the Walk of Champions. They're not going to wipe out any of the records you've set. They're not taking away any of your 18 national championships. It doesn't affect you in the larger picture. It might be embarrassing, sure. your big brother. You don't want to lose the little brother. That's a competition and a conflict as old as time, right? Big brother, little brother. I can say that because I'm a big brother and I have a younger brother and I have 2 sons and I see them live it out on a daily basis. Well, I don't see them every day now because they're in college, but you get the point. So, kudos to Auburn for giving South Alabama this chance. And I will say the same thing if South Alabama shocks the world tomorrow. And South Alabama does something that no in-state non-conference opponent has done since 1945 and beats Auburn. So I'm still hopeful that one day, while I'm still on this planet, that I will get to see Alabama shed its arrogance, lose its ignorance, and do something for football in the state of Alabama that it hasn't done since 1944. And give little brother a chance. I've said it before. I will say it again. I probably will be saying it until I have no more breath left in my body. All right, everyone. That's going to do it for today. I'm Kevin Skarbinski. This is ScarboKnows. Thank you to Brendan Martin, our executive producer on the Sidelines.live network. Check out Rob Brown and Buddy Martin and all the great shows here. And special thank you to our sponsor, Money Management Services, Birmingham's Financial Advisors. They are a family-owned, and here's the interesting part, fee-only financial services company. The Rice family, they're good friends of mine. They'll take great care of you. Check out their message next. Have a great weekend, everyone. See ya.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.